32 loss at SMU last weekend. North Texas is back on the road, this time to take on the Iowa Hawkeyes from Kinnick Stadium in Des Moines, Iowa. The game will be broadcast on ESPN2. Kickoff is at 2:30. We'll be bringing you up to kickoff. Welcome to Mean Green Game Day. I'm your host, Nick Laupius. I'm joined at the desk by Jordan James, Kennedy Miller, and Jackson Donovan. And first of all, before we get into anything, before we get into last week's game, it's great to be back. You know, it's great to have you guys here on the desk and just kind of go through, just kind of introduce yourselves a little bit about yourselves.
My name is Jordan James, and I'm a senior here at the University of North Texas, and I'm looking forward to talking Mean Green football and basketball and more.
My name is Kennedy Miller. I am a junior here at the University of North Texas. Big Mean Green fan, bigger Alabama fan, but we'll talk about that later.
My name is Jackson Donovan. Coming out of a little bitty town of Howe, Texas. Proud to be here. This is my first semester here at UNT doing the full experience. Glad to be part of the show.
Well, I'm really glad to have all you guys here. It's going to be a great show. Last week, not so great for the Mean Green football team. They did have a great start, got up early 10-0, but after that, 38 unanswered points by SMU. What did you guys see last week from UNT? First of all, again, the great start, but it looks like once momentum went toward SMU, they couldn't grab it back.
Honestly, as I watched that game, it was an emotional roller coaster. Okay, we started off up 10-0. I'm like, okay, we got this. We're on the road. We haven't won in Dallas since 1933. And all of a sudden, SMU went on to score 38 straight points. And I was just like, man, we're in for a rough night tonight.
For me, it was the turnovers. I think we lost 21 points off of turnovers. Mason Fine threw 2 interceptions. We also muffed a punt. We lost by 22 points. So you think about if those turnovers were negated, would this game have been close? Maybe we would have squeaked it out. We never know because turnovers kind of cost us that game.
I'm going to honestly go a little bit different. I think SMU's legit. I think they're a great team this year. I don't think they're going to be one of those power schools, especially coming out of the American Conference. It's not going to be that impressive. But I honestly think SMU is on their way looking forward.
Now, we talked about Kennedy. You talked about the fumbled punt. It was 10-10 at that point. North Texas got a defensive stop. It was a 3-and-out. The fumbled punt gave SMU the ball back on their, I believe, on the North Texas 30, and then they grabbed the lead. Talk about that's really, I think, where the momentum shifted, and then North Texas really couldn't get back into how they started off the game.
Definitely, I totally agree. I think these games are all about momentum, and Jordan said it. They had the momentum early on, going 10-0, and then turnovers kind of wilted it away, and then you look up, and it's 38 unanswered points, and now you've taken yourself out of the game.
And then again, just me watching this game, I mean, I don't know that UNT was necessarily prepared for this game. You played Lamar, an FCS school. Mm-hmm. You beat them 59-14. That's what you're supposed to do to bad teams. And I was just, I feel like they were overwhelmed at times against SMU.
And not to mention Lamar did struggle and didn't really get a lot of practice because of Hurricane Harvey, so that might have been another reason as to why North Texas looked very impressive against Lamar. But then going back, Cortland Sutton, he was dominant for SMU, really. And my question to you is he really that good, or did our secondary make him look a little bit better than what he actually is?
I think Sutton's the real deal. I mean, 8 catches, 163 yards. He's standing at 6'4", so in the conference, he's going to be going a lot bigger than anyone UNT is going to look at this year. I think the problem was the secondary was kind of a little bit riding the hype train. They were ill-equipped to guard him, and they kind of had some problems getting miscommunication and not having the right positioning on him. And so they struggled a little bit going deep.
I mean, yeah, he's definitely one of the best receivers in the country. He's going to go first round. But I feel like our secondary didn't do a good job for us tackling him, rallying to the ball. They had bad angles also. But, yeah.
And Kennedy?
He's a big body. They kind of said everything. Yeah. He got what he wanted. He was crisp in his routes, and they fed him the ball, and there was nothing that the UNT secondary could basically do to stop him.
Now, on the offensive side of the ball, Mason Fine, he did have those 2 interceptions, but he had 424 total yards and 3 touchdowns. What did you see from Mason Fine? I know that first interception he looked like he got tunnel vision, but then his second one, it was batted at the line and looked like maybe just an unlucky bounce for him. What were your guys' thoughts about Mason Fine?
I mean, I got to talk about the guys in front of Mason Fine. I feel like they didn't do a good job protecting him in the beginning. As the game went on, he started to make some plays. I saw they started making some adjustments, but overall, I'd say it's a solid game considering he had a career high in yards. And
I agree. I agree with Jordan. Mason Fine has taken a lot of sacks since he's become the starter here at North Texas. He was sacked 5 times last week, and I think Mason Fine's game, it's not bad, it's not great, it's just fine.
Mason Fine really struggled, especially coming from the offensive line. Like you said, giving up the 5 sacks. But then you look at UNT running backs last week had an incredible game. I mean, our starting running back played one half, and he was 10th in the NCAA in rushing yards. And then we go out this game, and we had, I believe it was 91 rushing yards the entire game. And so all the struggle was put on Mason Fine's back. And although he had career numbers, he was kind of hot and cold. And I think a lot of it was because the SMU defense was able to key in on him, and they didn't have to worry about a rushing offense at all.
And then I thought Seth Luttrell said it best. You know, when you load the box, it's kind of hard to run the ball. But that's them as a coaching staff. They have to make some adjustment, knowing that, okay, we're going to prepare for this run. Okay, let's get the passing game going, you know?
Mm-hmm. And so looking at that SMU game and really looking at the first 2 games of the season, North Texas has had a great start in both games. Like we said, the 10-0 early on lead last week. But then once they got the lead against SMU, that looked like they started pressing too much, trying to do too much. What needs to be improved the most from this UNT team going into the game today against Iowa?
Well, I think you limit your turnovers. You can't have 3 turnovers in a game, and you can't lose a turnover battle and consistently expect to win football games at this level. Also, defensively, there are not a lot of guys like him that are going to be in the conference. However, there are some talented receivers out there, and our secondary has to do a better job of locking down one main guy, making the offense go to their second and third options.
I mean, I thought the defensive coordinator, Troy Riff, said it best. They wasn't playing smart football against SMU. Like, everybody needs to do their job if they hope to be successful in the future.
Yeah, so definitely a lot of improvements for North Texas against a very good Iowa Hawkeyes team. Coming up on the other side of the break, we'll have some reactions from last week's game and kind of talk about just around the nation what's going on in the NCAA. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back here on Mean Green Game Day.
Is more than 125 years in the making. To find new solutions, we create a new point of view. We know what's possible when creativity, originality, and independent thought converge. We're ranked a Tier 1 research university. We're home to excellence the size of Texas. Define your future at UNT and soar to new heights.
We taught him how to hit a baseball. Just like that. Say hi! How to hit a receiver. The strike zone. The net. You taught him how to hit the upper corner. You even taught him how to hit the open man. But how much time have you spent teaching him what not to hit?
They told me a bottle couldn't dream. That I would never become a superhero. But I learned how to fly. Just to come back in a new disguise. And be the hero that I've always wanted to be.
Of college football, that's one of the great things about college football. Oklahoma beating Ohio State, USC dominating Stanford, so a lot going on. And right now for this segment, we're going to just kind of go through everyone who has impressed us so far, who's not been impressive so far. And I guess the first question I'm going to pose to you guys is, who has impressed you so far throughout the first 2 or 3 weeks?
I mean, Alabama hasn't had a huge game, but every year I'm impressed by Alabama. They just find a way at the end of the football season to be in the top 4 teams. You know, Nick Saban has been there going on since 2008. He has a record of 121-19, and he's a proven winner. Year out the year, no matter who they have on offense or defense, they find a way to be successful. So I'm always impressed with Alabama.
I know Kennedy loves that.
I
Kennedy
do.
loves hearing that.
I do. He's my favorite college coach, but my second favorite college coach is Jim Harbaugh. And that is who has impressed me the most, those Michigan Wolverines. A lot of people were down on them entering the year because they lost 9 out of 11 defensive starters. And Michigan did something coming into Florida and beat an SEC team by out-toughing them. That's the Jim Harbaugh way. That's what he's done everywhere he's went, from Stanford to the 49ers and now to Michigan. And that's usually what an SEC team does to a Big Ten team, but that's what a Jim Harbaugh team did to those Florida Gators opening day.
I'm going to take a look at Oklahoma State. I'm going to go with the Big 12. Big 12's kind of struggled lately. They haven't had anyone in the college football playoff. Oklahoma State's kind of riding the undercurrent of Oklahoma right now. Everyone's looking at them because they went up to Ohio State and won. Oklahoma State has been absolutely incredible. If you just look at today's game, they were up 49-14 against Pitt at the half. Mason Rudolph's having a great game already today. He's 20 of 28 for 450-plus yards. When you have a quarterback like that, a guy that comes in, passes up going to the NFL to be maybe not a first-round pick, but passes up, comes back for a senior year, that's going to do great for the camaraderie of the team. And when you have that team right now, on defense, they're a little bit slow, but when you have your offense racking up 650 yards a game, I mean, you can allow to have your defense be a little bit slower.
The state of Oklahoma enjoying some quality football. As you mentioned, Oklahoma beating Ohio State. Now the next question, who has not impressed you so far? I know for me, it's kind of been Ohio State. They struggled in week 1 against Indiana and then the loss against Oklahoma. Guys, who do you have that hasn't really lived up maybe to your standards so far?
I hate to break a lot of y'all hearts, but the Texas Longhorn hasn't impressed me at all. I mean, going into the Maryland game, they were a 21-point favorite, and they ended up losing that game bad. They beat a bad San Jose State team. You know, everybody came in sipping the Kool-Aid for Tom Herman. He's going to win. He was at Ohio State. He was at Houston. This is still Charlie Strong team. They're still not that good on defense. Offense, there's still some question mark at the quarterback position. So Texas really hasn't impressed me.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, Nick. I think the Ohio State Buckeyes have no-showed so far this year. The Indiana game, I really thought they were going to lose when I started watching the game, and then Oklahoma surprised me by going in there and beating them. Ohio State just doesn't look the same. Defensively, they can't really stop anyone. J.T. Barrett looks like he's a freshman again when he should be a senior. He can't make the throws for some reason. I was sold on Ohio State coming into the year, but now I'm more impressed with Michigan, and I think they're going to win the Big Ten.
All right, Ohio State's good, but they're not great. They're not going to be great this year. If you look back at when they won the national championship, you had Zeke Elliott rushing for 150 yards a game, and then you have Cardell Jones who's throwing for 250 plus. This year, J.T. Barrett hasn't been able to get to that level. He's been good, but he's been kind of control his running abilities, and so he's been trying to stay in the pocket. And right now, this offensive line has not been able to support him. He's going to have to try and prove himself to the NFL that he can stay in the pocket, but to win on this football team, he can't do that. He has to be able to spread the field and take a little bit of the stress off of the wide receivers who are trying to pull the secondary with him. If he's just staying in the pocket, those linebackers are just going to sit and wait and leave the secondary out on an island, and that's going to shut down the offense.
So talking about Oklahoma, Ohio State, how about Lincoln Riley, the youngest head coach in the NCAA right now? What a game he called against Ohio State to get Oklahoma that win. That was a very impressive game to watch that young head coach lead his team to. And so definitely very impressive there. Now another question, what team that's not in the top 10 right now do you think would make to the playoffs most likely?
I'm going to go with Georgia. I know it's kind of just kind of outsider looking in right now, but when you go up to Notre Dame, I understand that Notre Dame is not 100% impressive this year, but when you get the crowd that they have showing up in South Bend, they had a quarter of the stadium flying red flags. That's impressive, and that just shows that the fans and everyone is buying into this program this year. It's all going to start with that offensive line, and then on the flip side, the defensive line. They have 2 guys that are potential All-Americans on their front 4 right now, and if they can keep that going into a kind of weaker SEC East, all they have to really worry about right now is Tennessee and Florida. I think they can do pretty well this year.
Now, me being an Alabama fan, I will roll with the Washington Huskies for this reason. The last time we saw the Washington Huskies before the season started, they hung in close with that Alabama Roll Tide team that everyone predicted would just steamroll over them. This Washington Huskies team returns their quarterback, Jake Browning. I believe in college football, you have to have a good quarterback. Sometimes there are outliers, but I think you'll have to have a great quarterback to get you to win those big games. I know they're in the Pac-12, which is a very difficult conference, but I think Washington is legit, and I think they'll make the playoffs.
And I would have to say the Louisville Cardinals. Right now, they're ranked at number 12 heading into this week against Clemson. To me, they have a very favorable schedule. They play Clemson. Clemson is the hardest team on their schedule to me. They're in a weak ACC division. Lamar Jackson won the Heisman last year, so there's a lot of experts talking about there's a chance that he can win again this year. But I mean, Bobby Petrino, everywhere he's won also. Pretty much, if they win this Clemson game, I feel like they can make a run at it.
And talk about the ACC, Florida State without their starting quarterback for the rest of the season. That's going into the next question. Who do you think right now that's in the top 10, or top 25, that's not going to be in the top 25? I think I have Florida State just because they're not going to have their starting quarterback for the whole season. And like we said, like you talked about, the ACC is a very tough conference.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you also. Florida State, this is, like Kennedy said, this is a quarterback-driven league in a sense, and with them not having their quarterback is going to be very key. They have a true freshman coming in there. He played solid last week, but I don't know about this week. Defensively, they're really good, but I just think there's a lot of question offensively for them.
I think Wisconsin will fall out of the top 25 because they're in the Big Ten. They're going to be running up against Penn State. They're going to be running up against Michigan. They're going to be running up against Ohio State. Also, it's an interesting stat. They were ranked 84th in the nation in finishing drives. If you can't finish drives against those teams, you don't have a chance to win. And so I think those will be losses for them, and I think eventually they'll be knocked out of the top 25.
I know my graphic's probably going to say something else, but I'm going to pull with Wisconsin. I just don't think they have enough right now.
Thank you.
Honestly, in the Big Ten, when you look, you have Michigan, who is going to be in the top 2, top 3 in that conference. Penn State, honestly, is my pick to win the conference. I believe everyone has a lot of faith in Michigan right now. Penn State's going to win that conference. And Wisconsin, as good as they are, I think they're going to falter. A lot of at least their image for the last couple of years has been running. And right now they just don't have it. They have a good offensive line, but they don't have a running back that can be the focal back day in and day out right now.
All right, and then the last thing is a bold prediction for this season. I kind of want to give mine. I think this might be a little bit too bold. I'm going to say that TCU ends up in the Big 12 championship game. I think either Oklahoma State or Oklahoma is going to falter, and I think TCU, they're the real deal this year. Gary Patterson working his magic. It just has another one of those feels like one of those, I believe it was a 2012 season. I can't remember exactly when they went to the Rose Bowl. I think TCU is going to be very good this year.
I would say for a bold prediction, I would say that Jim Harbaugh will not be the coach of Michigan next season. He's never stayed.
Wow.
He's never stayed anywhere longer than 4 years. You know, I feel like he's going to actually end up at the Indianapolis Colts. You know, he used to be a quarterback there. You know, they have a new GM there. I feel like their owner, he finally to the point where he wants to win. You know, he had Andrew Luck. He led Colin Kaepernick and Alex Smith to the NFC Championship game. You know, so I feel like Jim Harbaugh.
I like that. Jordan James, I will say that the University of Texas will turn things around this year. And I think it starts with a win tonight. Now, I know that's in a whole separate block, but I do think that these Texas Longhorns are legit. I think they are a 7 or 8 win team this year. I think Tom Herman, I'm a Tom Herman believer. I'm from Houston. He turned around those Houston Cougars. I like Tom Herman. I like what he brings to the table. I think he's going to turn around quicker than people think.
Okay.
I thought I had a bold prediction before today's game started. I've got UCLA not even making it to the conference championship game. Everyone's kind of riding them after the huge comeback they had against A&M. Now you look at A&M, and for the 3rd straight week, they're losing at the half. Also, I'm going to go Josh Rosen is not going to be a finalist for the Heisman Trophy. He had a great game against A&M, but when you look at what they have coming up, he's going to struggle on the road. Just listing off who they have coming up. On the road, they go to Stanford, to Washington, at Utah, and then at USC. He is going to struggle. 3 of those 4 have some of the loudest stadiums you will ever see in college football. He is not going to be able to keep up the pace he had against A&M. Honestly, I have Lamar Jackson as a finalist, Shaquan Barkley, and then Baker Mayfield. Those are going to be the 3 that this year are going to lead their teams to either a conference championship win or a Final 8 bowl game.
So, go ahead.
I was going to say like one more point about Jim Harbaugh. You know, everyone said Bobby Petrino's not going to leave. Pete Carroll's not going to leave. Nick Saban's not going to leave. So I don't see why it's out the question for Jim Harbaugh to leave.
All right, so definitely some interesting points being made. As we come back on the other side of this break, we'll take a look at Conference USA and kind of give a preview of what's to expect from Conference USA this football season, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
I thought I was out there with you.
Dad's home!
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
The inherent right to work is one of the elemental privileges of a free people. Endowed, as our nation is, with abundant physical resources, and inspired as it should be to make those resources and opportunities available for the enjoyment of all, we approach reemployment with the real hope of finding a better answer than we have now.
Donate to Goodwill, where your donations help fund job placement and training for people in your community. Of all the things you've done with your bike, donating it to Goodwill may be the most incredible of all. Your donations help fund job placement and training for people in your community, which means your stuff can be more powerful than you think. Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs.
Thanks for coming in for the interview.
Oh, yeah, of course.
All right, we got your personal references, your resume, high school diploma or equivalent.
Skip the drama. Get your diploma.
Yes, it's right there.
Great.
Take that first step towards a better future. Find free adult education classes at finishyourdiploma.org.
And welcome back to Mean Green Game Days. We're at our Conference USA Buy or Sell segment now. I'll be posing some scenarios from Conference USA to the people here at the desk, and they're either going to buy it or they're going to sell it. So let's get right into it. First question. Western Kentucky's going to repeat as Conference USA champions. Kennedy?
I'm going to go ahead and buy that, Nick. I think Western Kentucky is light years ahead in terms of their recruiting, not just in football, but also in basketball. They reign supreme in these sports over the past couple of years. It's a tough place to play when you go to play in Western Kentucky. I think they're going to repeat as champions.
I'm going to sell that. There's just something about Louisiana Tech I like. You know, they won 2 of the last 3 Conference USA West titles, but every year a Skip Holtz team, you know, they're going to be ready to play, and they have a good system. I feel like they can plug any kind of player in there and be successful in it.
I'm also going to sell. I think the Hilltoppers are going to get halfway up there, and they're just going to fall off. When you have teams like UTSA and Louisiana Tech, they are just a little bit ahead, maybe light years ahead, but they're going to be able to go in, and they're just going to control the team defensively. Western Kentucky is good. They kind of run the spread offense. They have an exceptional quarterback. However, I don't believe they're going to be able to keep up with UTSA this year or even having Old Dominion as a road game on their schedule. I think they're going to probably end the season on conference play with 2 losses.
And going back to what Jordan said, Louisiana Tech, I mean, those 2 teams have sort of been at the top of the conference for past 3 or 4 years, so always very competitive with those 2. Now, going to the next question, is Brent Stockstill going to be the best QB in the conference this season? Or is someone else going to take that role or that title?
Although I said Western Kentucky will repeat as champions, my stock is high on Stockstill. I really like the kid. He's a 6 foot. He's not really that big for your prototypical quarterback. He's only 6 foot, but the guy can just make the throws. I really like his game. I really like his awareness in the pocket. I'm stuck on him being the best quarterback in the conference.
I wouldn't say that he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but as of right now, from what I've seen based on 2 games, I'm going to have to go with Mason Fine. You know, he leads the conference in he leads them in touchdown, he leads them in yards, but as of right now, I'm going to have to go with Mason Fine.
I'm gonna sell as well. I know my graphic has me buying. I'm gonna sell for the pure fact of the offensive line is just poor for this team. Stockstill has a great arm. He may have the greatest talent in the conference. However, that offensive line is going to be the catalyst for this team. If they can't give him protection, he's not going to be able to make the plays that we saw from him last year. And so for me, this year, he's already struggling. In 2 games, he has 435 yards of total offense. For the greatest quarterback in the conference, that's just not good enough, especially when you're competing with Mason Fine here at the amazing North Texas. Honestly, I just don't think he's the greatest in the conference anymore.
I like the confidence. I like the belief in Mason Fine. That's what we got to see, got to hear more of. Now, next question. UTSA, they're looking like a pretty good program so far this year. Are they going to have Frank Wilson back at the helm next season, or will it get scooped up by a bigger school?
I think UTSA will have another good year this year, and so I'm going to buy that. I think he'll still be there in 2018, but I think in the coming years after that, somebody else will definitely offer him a job because he is turning things around at UTSA.
I thought you said it best. He definitely is turning things around. I believe they went 5-8 last year under him, but it's still a rebuilding phase right there. But I mean, essentially, Conference USA is a step stool job for coaches, basically. Like, Seth Luttrell may not be here. Even him, Frank Wilson may not be here as well. But I feel like he's going to be there a little bit longer.
I'm going to buy it as well. I think Frank Wilson is a heck of a coach. I mean, you look 2 years ago, they went 2-11, and then last year bumped it up to 5 wins. I think he is a great coach. UTSA is in a good situation having him. However, I don't believe he's going to be able to stick around. There's going to be someone come in. It may be another mid-major program, but coming from UTSA, he's going to be able to put himself in the position to get a higher-paying job and maybe be able to go somewhere where he has someone better than the offensive defensive coordinators he has right now. And honestly, that's what's going to be holding him back from UTSA from being able to stay there.
And something I heard about Frank Wilson, he actually wanted the LSU job. He was kind of hurt in a sense when he didn't get it because he brought a lot of those top recruits to LSU. So, he's a great recruiter, but we'll see what happens.
So interesting to see maybe go back to LSU as a coordinator or something. And now we love North Texas here. We have a lot of belief in the Mean Green, but do you guys think they will finish above 500 in conference play this year?
My heart wants me to buy this. But just on initial reaction, gut feeling, I'm going to sell it. I don't think they finish above 500. I think last year they had a really good year. They knocked off some teams that a lot of people predicted that they wouldn't do it. I think those teams come back and knock them off. I think they finish a little bit under. I don't think it's a dramatic decrease, but I don't think they finish above 500.
This is a tough question right here, but I feel like there's a lot to be optimistic about far as a North Texas. I know last week is fresh in everyone's mind, but like I said, the secondary has shown signs of them that they can improve. They have a nice receiver core. Mason Fines in his sophomore year there. Offensive line, they have a new offensive line coach, so I think you can be optimistic about the future for North Texas.
I'm not going to be the deciding vote on this one. Kyle's going to probably be driven crazy by what I'm saying. I'm going to change my graphic again. I'm going to push. I'm not going to buy or sell. I'm going to push this one. Honestly, for me, it comes down to the last 3 games. And you have UTEP, Army, and Rice. Those 3 games are going to decide if this team is going to go 500 or if they're going to be below. And for me, I think they're going to – I have them at 6-6. I have them going to a bowl game. But for me this year, it's tough. I'm more optimistic. I think they have a closer chance of going 7-5 than – 5-7 or 4-8, but I'm going to push.
So are we ever going to need Jackson's picks? Because he's gone against every graphic, I think, so far. Anyway, last question before we go to break. Conference USA is going to send 6 teams to bowl games this season. What are your thoughts?
I'm selling it.
Selling it?
I'm definitely selling it. Like I said about North Texas knocking off some opponents, I think last year was kind of an outlier for Conference USA to send so many teams to bowl games. I think this year it'll kind of even out, and I think it'll probably be maybe 3 or 4 that go to a bowl game this year.
I'm thinking 3 or 4 also. They're far as like top teams in this conference, there's like Western Kentucky and Louisiana Tech and maybe a Southern Miss, Middle Tennessee maybe, but there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding this conference, so I would sell it.
I'm going to sell, but I'm still going to be optimistic with the conference. I'm going to go with someone a little bit of an outlier. I'm going to say Old Dominion gets a bowl game this year. I'm going to say we get 4 teams. I'm going to say Old Dominion is one of them. I'm going to say UNT is another one. So I'm going to sell this. I don't think 6 is going to be quite what we have. However, this Conference USA is doing better, and they're going to be on the rise, but I think 6 is still a little bit too much.
So an exciting season coming up for Conference USA and everyone in the conference. Coming back on the other side of the break, Coach Luttrell addressed the media on Tuesday talking about last week's game against SMU and what they need to do to improve and be more competitive against Iowa. We'll break down some of the audio that he had coming up on the other side of the break.
I will not be news today. I will not make another push to be the first man in space with frosted tips and a puka shell necklace. I'm Lance Bass, and I will not be trending today because there is a much bigger story that needs to be heard.
Are we there yet?
Yep. We're here.
It's a short drive from your neighborhood to your naturehood. To find a neighborhood park or green space near you, visit discovertheforest.org.
Sometimes all it takes to be a dad is remembering how to be a kid again. Take time to be a dad today.
Of all the things you've done with your bike, donating it to Goodwill may be the most incredible of all. Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs.
The inherent right to work is one of the elemental privileges of a free people. Endowed, as our nation is, with abundant physical resources, and inspired as it should be, with the high purpose to make those resources and opportunities available for the enjoyment of all. We approach this problem of reemployment with the real hope of finding a better answer than we have now.
Well, on Tuesday morning, Coach Luttrell addressed the media, kind of talked about last week's game against SMU and his thoughts and his plans to improve and have a better week of practice so they can be more competitive this week against a Big 12 opponent in Iowa. The first thing he talked about, one of the big storylines really in the first two games were the turnovers from North Texas. The first two games, UNT has lost the turnover margin. Here's what Coach Luttrell had to say about that.
We got to play smarter. We can't turn the football over, and we got to get off the field. We didn't win the turnover margin, and it shows it right there. You lose by 22.
So last Saturday, North Texas had 3 turnovers, resulting in 21 points for SMU. North Texas lost by 22 points. How big was it that they had those 3 turnovers and again lost the turnover margin?
Well, you and Coach Luttrell just basically said the entire thing. It is extremely big. You cannot lose the turnover margin by 3 turnovers and expect to win. You can't lose a turnover margin, expect to lose the turnover margin at all and expect to win. Games like this where you might be overmatched, you have to protect the football. Every coach preaches this. You cannot fumble the ball. You cannot throw interceptions, especially in crucial plays on the field. You cannot turn the football over.
Yeah, and the thing about turnovers is, like, North Texas is not good enough to have turnovers. You know, 3 turnovers, that's 21 points that they could have had, and then that game could have potentially been different, you know. But definitely turnovers is something they need to address going into this week against Iowa, especially when you're on the road. You have to play the perfect game in a sense, you know, because your back is against the wall and things like that.
After giving up the turnovers, I'm going to take a look more at the defense. The defensive line was not able to put pressure on SMU, so even though the offense kind of struggled and gave up those 3 turnovers, I look at the 21 points that they gave up, and people are kind of just blaming the loss on the offense. When you look at that defense, they weren't able to stand the ground. You need to have a defense. If your offense is going to have a struggling day, your defense needs to be able to step in and pick up the offense and give them the boost and say, hey, no, you may make a few mistakes. We got your back. We're going to help you out here. And they just didn't do it last week.
Well, if your corners are able to cover, then maybe the pressure will get to them. So, I mean, I feel like the defensive unit as a whole needs to step up.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because that's another thing Coach Luttrell addressed, was talking about the defense against SMU, see what his thoughts were and how they can improve this week against Iowa.
We need to play much better at the back end. We got to be more disciplined. We got to, you know, have our eyes in the right spots. Make sure our eye discipline is really good. You know, because they're going to pound it. You know, get some play action shots. So you got to be very disciplined in what you do on the back end. And that's something that we really need to work on this week.
So you heard him talk about eye discipline. There's a lot of the time during the game where Cortland Sutton was wide open, a lot of play action, a lot of trickery from SMU, fooled the secondary of UNT. What does UNT have to do different this week to be better against Iowa?
Well, first I want to point out that it's an entirely different matchup. Cortland Sutton was a beast last week. He's 6'4", he's got a lot of size, he wins a lot of matchup. Iowa is a smash-mouth football team. They're going to pound the football and make you submit. They want to be the aggressor. And so this week, UNT, the defensive line, has to win almost every play at the line of scrimmage.
Definitely, I agree with you as well. But I feel like North Texas essentially needs to play their brand of football, get back to establishing that run game like they did against Lamar the first week. But establish your run game, get Mason Fine comfortable, get some little short, intermediate passing. But definitely play their game, and then something potentially can happen.
I'm going to piggyback off Kenny a little bit. It all starts with Roderick Young as the nose tackle, as the heart of that defensive line. It all starts with him. You have to be able to put pressure on the passing game. Even though Iowa is primarily a running team, you have to be able to shut off the middle, make them pass a little bit, get them out of their comfort zone. I mean, I agree our secondary is a little bit struggling to start the year, but you have to get Iowa out of their game. If you let them just run the ball over you, this game is going to be very long because Iowa's going to control the ball. And UNT, as you said earlier, is leading Conference USA in time of possession. That needs to continue this game. They need to be able to bring Iowa out of their designed matchup and get them to put the ball in the air.
Iowa State did a good job last week, in a sense, exposing Iowa's secondary. You know, their quarterback threw for over 347 yards against them. So they've shown that, they're vulnerable on the back end as far as their secondary.
And again, it comes down to coaching. Coach Luttrell said in his press conference that the coaches were able to learn a lot last Saturday against SMU.
Have a chance to get some points there. Ended up throwing an interception, and I think I would put that on coaches as much as Mason. You're in that situation on the plus 38. Probably just, maybe run the ball there, get it to 4-down territory if you know you're going to go for it anyway. But you put them in that situation, and it happened. And we got to learn as coaches and grow as coaches and as players.
So Coach Luttrell there taking some responsibility for that, not pointing any fingers at his players, saying that the coaches need to be better. How important is that for a player to hear that your coach isn't throwing you under the bus, but it's really the whole team effort, to be cliche, it's coaches and players?
Well, it's definitely important. As a player, you wouldn't want to play with anybody else that would only point the blame at the players. Coaches have to take responsibility too. Coaches call plays at the line of scrimmage. Coaches practice with you every day on things, on their game plan to how to beat the opponent. So I think it was incredibly humbling for Coach Luttrell to do that, and it's much respect to him.
I thought Seth Luttrell said it best. In a sense, he's basically saying that, that we are one, we're one unit in a sense. So we need to come together, and we expect to, pull up the upset against Iowa.
I think Seth Luttrell did a good job of kind of being able to take the blame off the players. Mason Fine did struggle a little bit, but he was able to take a little bit of that burden onto himself. However, there is a time when there is only so much a coach can do. You can have countless hours under the NCAA guidelines of being able to practice, watching film, and in the weight room. But there is a point when you step on that field, the play is already called, it's on the players to execute. And though Seth Luttrell did a good job of being able to kind of take the pressure off Mason Fine a little bit, as a young quarterback, he needs to be able to learn from these mistakes. And I think going forward, he'll listen to Coach Luttrell a little bit more, but there is a time when it's on him to pick up the mistakes and kind of correct what he's doing.
And Mason Fine, 2 interceptions, 424 yards of total offense, though, and he's got a good young wide receiver core. Here's what Coach Luttrell had to say about one of those, Jalen Guyton.
Yeah, I think he's really growing. He's gotten better. I think just getting that first fade ball in the first game, I think, really boosted some of his confidence. But, he's had a good camp. We need to find different ways to get him the ball.
So, again, a young wide receiver core, guys. Just real quick before we go to break, what are your thoughts on this wide receiver core and then especially Jalen Guyton?
I like him a lot. He's 6'2", got a nice size to him. He's physical, and I think he can win those matchups in the red zone where Jeffrey Wilson can't really pound it in, or we have to throw it in. He could be a red zone threat for this North Texas Mean Green team.
I definitely like Jalen Guyton. I feel like he's one of the few, transfers who's actually made an immediate impact in a sense, but I need other receivers other than Jalen Guyton to step up and make a play because teams are just going to double him.
Jalen Guyton, to me, has a little bit more of an impact, not just on the football field. Coming out of Trinity Valley Community College is one of those, last chance universities. He passed up scholarships to Kansas, to West Virginia. He's passing up Power 5 conference scholarship offers to come to Denton. I think that's really good when we're going under this new Denton kind of image going around this town. And I think he'll be able to do a lot on recruiting and on the recruiting side and not just on the field.
And talking about new Denton, this is definitely a different North Texas team that played Iowa back in 2015, a completely different Iowa team. We'll look back at that 2015 matchup between these two teams and even preview Iowa and what they've done so far this season. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back on Mean Green Game Day.
Hey, it's Ava, and this is Tess from Vivo's Do It Yourselfie, where we recreate the hottest looks from today's biggest music videos.
After cleaning out our closet, we have a lot of clothes we don't wear anymore.
Like this old t-shirt.
It's not garbage, it's actually a brand new rug.
And to make it, all you need to do is cut, tie, and glue.
Cut the t-shirt into strips.
Tie the strips into knots.
And glue the knots to the bath mat. I love it. Give your garbage another life.
And recycle.
My heart doesn't see race. Love is love.
They said a bottle was just a bottle. That no one would ever notice me. But I knew I could be more. That one day, I would make people smile.
I want to eat apples and bananas. I need to eat apples and bananas. Why can't I eat?
1 in 5 children struggles with hunger in America. Support the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks to help provide meals to those in need. Join us at feedingamerica.org.
Away from first kick or kickoff from Kinnick Stadium in Des Moines, Iowa, UNT taking on the Iowa Hawkeyes. These two teams have played once before. That was back in 2015. It was a 62-16 win for the Iowa Hawkeyes, but that was when they were 12-0 in the regular season, and they lost in the Rose Bowl to Stanford and Christian McCaffrey. So completely different teams on both sides here. Iowa is 2-0 to start off the season. Did struggle against Iowa State last week, won in overtime 44-41. Just quickly, what are your guys' thoughts on this Iowa team so far, and how can UNT maybe keep it close and maybe attack some of the weaknesses for Iowa?
I think we kind of already talked about it. Jackson touched on it. UNT leads Conference USA in time of possession. You cannot let this Iowa offense be on the field all day because they will wear down a defense. They're physical, they're smash mouth, they want to run the football, and if you let them, you're going to be on the field all day, and defenses will get worn out probably about second, third quarter, and then the game could get ugly from there.
I thought I said it earlier, pretty much North Texas needs to play their brand of football, then maybe they can be successful. But he said it they're a very physical team. They actually have 2 rushers that rush for 1,000 yards or more coming up in this game. So definitely they need to, defensive line is key for them to play gap sound defense. Secondary need to cover. Receivers need to step up and make a play. Everybody needs to step up.
I mean, we've already stated and kind of proven as a fact that Iowa is a running team with Akram Wadley as their running back, 5.9 yards a carry. That is incredible, and especially in a Power 5 conference team. You have Iowa that every year they either play Minnesota, Michigan, Ohio State, Wisconsin. I mean, that is huge defenses you're going up against, and he has had a stellar career. And yet we have Nate Stanley for Iowa that leads the Big Ten in touchdowns. Right now, I'm a little bit worried about this game. I think Iowa's going to have a heck of a team coming out. It's going to be on UNT to control the ball. If they can keep the ball for at least 55-60% of the game, they will put themselves in a position to have it tight going into the last 6 minutes.
And that's something they didn't do last week against SMU. Defensively they failed to get the team off the field. On offense they failed to convert on third down. So they need to convert and get them off the field. And yeah.
And Iowa last week threw for 333 passing yards. That's kind of a scary statistic considering the troubles that the UNT secondary had last week. But a bright spot that Coach Latrobe mentioned in his press conference, they only gave up 99 rush yards last week against SMU. He thought the defensive line played pretty well. So like Jordan and Jackson said, the defensive line is going to have to be a lot more physical against Iowa, who really likes to run the ball.
I definitely agree. And this week, it could be a trap game. for Iowa because they have Penn State coming up next week. And so maybe they overlooked the Mean Green, and maybe they come in here after eating some, well, they don't have Whataburger up there. Maybe some McDonald's corn.
There we go.
There we go. Yeah.
And so, maybe they overlooked them, and North Texas, if they, like you said, control the tempo, play at their game, get Jeffrey Wilson going, then they can sneak out a win here.
Jeffrey Wilson needs to really come back. I think Iowa's kind of maybe going to be a little bit lax going against them. They're going to see the numbers, the eye-popping numbers coming from Mason Fine coming out of the SMU game. Jeffrey Wilson really struggled. I think he ended up with, 52 rushing yards. He needs to step up. After that first game, he was 150 plus. He needs to come into Iowa. After the SMU game, he really struggled. He needs to find the backfield in UNT is his. He is the focal back. He needs to prove that to all of us fans here in Denton, seeing them against a Power 5 team. If he can get 100 yards, even in a loss, that to me is a win.
Well, it starts up front. The offensive line need to match their physicality. When they're coming at them, the offensive line need to step up and, in a sense, hit them in the mouth because Jeffrey Wilson can't create these holes on his own. So they need to protect for Mason Fine, protect for Jeffrey Wilson in order to establish this run game.
And so we saw last week against SMU, North Texas really didn't establish the run game early on, and then once they fell behind, they really had to air it out because they didn't have a lot of time to try and establish the run game. So just how important is it to, like you said, get Jeffrey Wilson established early on and control the flow of the game and get time of possession?
It's definitely important. Every running back says that they need rhythm, so he needs his carries early on to see where the holes will open up, how the defense is playing him. And so if you can get him going early, then I think it sets up the tempo for North Texas to maintain for the rest of the game.
Jeffrey Wilson is going to be huge, but I feel like Mason Fine needs to be able to complete some short passes and just some deep passes because, Iowa State had six passes that were 20 yards more against this Iowa team. So they've shown that they're vulnerable. They actually have a young secondary as well.
Jeffrey Wilson and Mason Fine need to work together. I also think it kind of goes back to Latrell. In the press conference, he made a comment about they need to learn from the losses and make some better play calls. I think a lot of it comes down to the play action pass. You need to have Jeffrey Wilson, who has proven in this conference he is one of the top running backs. He needs to have a good first half. If they can get him at least 60, 70 yards in that first half, that'll open up the play action pass, and that'll put a little bit more ease on Mason Fine's young shoulder. If he can, even though the offensive line will most likely struggle to start this game, especially going up against the big front four for Iowa, if they can get a running game started, even if they have to bounce it outside, that'll help out Mason Fine a lot, especially with his young eyes going up against a big team like this, especially at Iowa.
Speaking of Iowa's defense, Mason Fine took some hits against SMU, and he looked like he got up kind of shaking a little bit, so I'm kind of worried about how he's going to be able to take a hit from an Iowa player,
And Jackson, going back to what you said, playing at Iowa, UNT didn't look very composed last week once the momentum went for SMU at SMU. What do you guys expect to see from UNT? Do you think they're going to be more composed out there in a big crowd at Kinnick Stadium, or are we going to see maybe a little bit the same of what we saw last week once they fell behind?
I feel like they're going to look composed. I went to the press conference. A lot of players said we look forward to this opportunity. When our back's against the wall against Florida, they had a solid showing against Florida despite them losing 32-0. But it was 17-0 going into the half, so you have to feel good as a North Texas fan. But I believe these players are ready. These coaches have them ready to compete in this game.
Yeah, I think that's where it gets on coaches to do a good job of preparing them in practice. When you go on those tough road environments, you hear the stories. Coaches will play loud music on speakers outside on the fields to kind of get their players ready for the noise that they will encounter on the road. But I agree with you. I think the players will be composed. I think they're excited for a matchup against a Big Ten opponent, considering that some of the players were on the team the last time they lost 62-16. Kind of feel like they have something to prove against this Iowa team.
I think this is where Coach Latrell's magic finally comes through and shines. The one thing that he has been able to do last year in his first year, this UNT team was projected to get 1-2 wins at best, and he was able to get them into a bowl game. He is going to be able to prove that the one thing he does best is he gets his players to play well. If it's not for him, he at least gets them to play together in spite of him. No matter what he has to do to yell at them just to get them to have each other's backs, he will be able to get them at Iowa to drown out the crowd and just look at who they have across the field. And I think they'll come out. I think late in the game, their camaraderie is going to be the fiber that'll keep this team together.
And another thing that Seth Latrell has done really well is that every game, some games when North Texas are losing, but I still see fight in them. And that's one thing I didn't see out of the previous coach that they had. So that's very key when you're playing it up in these tough environments, continue rallying to the ball and continue to make plays.
And it goes back to what Latrell said in the press conference. It's not all on the players. We, as coaches, have to be better, have to prepare them better, and we got to take responsibility. So like you said, maybe we didn't see that a whole lot with the previous coach, so it's great to see that for Seth Latrell to kind of take responsibility and really know what he needs to do to get his players prepared. So that's what we've got. The matchup coming up very quickly here from Iowa in Des Moines. That will be on ESPN2. Coming up on the other side of the break, it will be the best segment of the show. We'll have our predictions from not only the North Texas-Iowa game, but also some of the bigger games around the nation. So stick around. You won't want to miss that. We'll be right back on Mean Green Game Day.
UNT is more than 125 years in the making. To find new solutions, we create a new point of view. We know what's possible when creativity, originality, and independent thought converge. We're ranked a Tier 1 research university. We're home to excellence the size of Texas. Define your future at UNT and soar to new heights.
You taught him how to hit a baseball.
Just like that. Say hi!
How to hit a receiver. The strike zone. The net. You taught him how to hit the upper corner. You even taught him how to hit the open man. But how much time have you spent teaching him what not to hit?
They told me a bottle couldn't dream. That I would never become a superhero. But I learned how to fly. Just to come back in a new disguise. And be the hero that I've always wanted to be.
Welcome back to Mean Green Game Day. Just moments away from kickoff in Iowa City, Iowa, as North Texas will take on the Iowa Hawkeyes. That'll be on ESPN2, live from Kinnick Stadium. And now it's the best part of the show. It's prediction segments. We got the North Texas-Iowa game as well, but we've got some of the better games going on tonight. And the first one, we're going to get right into it. Clemson at Louisville. Who do you guys got? Or actually, if I go ahead, I'm going to go with Clemson. I think Dabo Swinney, he's got his team ready. It's going to be the first road game for their freshman quarterback. It's going to be his first start, but I think Clemson has enough to beat Louisville.
Last year, I picked Clemson to win this game. They're going on the they were at home, and now they're going on the road against Louisville. I think this year Louisville has a more experienced quarterback. I think they're playing at home. They have the comfort of not going into Clemson Stadium. I'm picking Louisville to win this.
I'm going to have to go with Clemson to win this. I think it's going to be a close game. As you saw last year, it came down to the last play of the game, so it's definitely going to be a close game, but there's just something about a Dabo Swinney coach team that I like.
I'm gonna take Clemson as well. This game is gonna be predicated completely around defense. When you look at Clemson's last 5 games, I'm also going through last year in the playoffs. They have played 4 teams ranked in the top 25 and given up 15 points a game. That's absolutely incredible. And even this year, to start the first 2 games, 118.5 yards a game. For a defense that has 4 people on the offensive line, on the defensive line, 3 of them can be first-round draft picks. You do not see that, especially nowadays. Especially with Dabo Swinney, everyone talks about how his whole team is based around offense, especially with Deshaun Watson leaving. Everyone is completely overlooking this defense. They will be the key to this win today.
I'll tell you, these ACC matchups seem to get better and better each year. And going now, TCU is going to be hosting SMU. I'm not sure if this is just because I don't like SMU or I think TCU is the real deal. Maybe a little bit of both, but I have TCU winning. They're at home against SMU tonight.
I think SMU is going to win this. I think they're, rallying from that victory last week against North Texas. Probably it was probably worse than it should have been. And so I think they're leaning on that this week going into TCU. They're going to pull off the upset.
I'm gonna have to go with TCU. I mean, SMU's okay. They beat us. They beat SFA and they beat UNT. SFA didn't even. I mean, SMU didn't even really impress me against a UNT. The only player they have, to me, in my opinion, is like Sutton, essentially.
I'm going to go with TCU purely for the fact that SMU has not really had a team of this caliber that they've had to go up against. UNT is good, but it's not TCU. And also with TCU, you have Darius Anderson. When Kenny Hill struggled this past weekend at Arkansas, Darius Anderson was able to prove he can be the mainstay in that backfield. He will be the key to this team. The offensive line is going to be able to open up gaps for him. And Kenny Hill, if he struggles, look for Darius Anderson to have another huge game.
I've got to stick with TCU. Like I said, I think they might be in that Big 12 championship game. Now going over to the SEC, Tennessee at Florida. I've got Tennessee. I think it's going to be a close matchup, but I think Tennessee just kind of is a little more physical than Florida tonight.
I'm rolling with the Florida Gators, and it seems like I'm rolling with every other team that you guys aren't rolling with. So I'm rolling with the Florida Gators. It's going to be in Gainesville, the first time back after the tragedy that was Hurricane Irma. I think they're going to rally around the loss from Michigan, and I think they're going to make a statement here tonight.
Definitely in Tennessee's first game against Georgia Tech, I feel like they struggled at times. Georgia Tech's an okay team, but I feel like you said, Florida's definitely has something to play for in this game. They feel like everyone has wrote them off in a sense. So definitely, I'm going to roll with Florida, so come back.
All right, fine. I'll disagree with y'all this time. I have Tennessee winning.
There we go.
With Tennessee, Malik Zaire, he's good, but he is not a Power 5 starting quarterback. At Notre Dame, he proved he could not win the job. And when he did, he had a couple good games, and then he faltered and made errors and terrible passes. At Florida, he has not been able to prove that he has a good pocket presence. And on that Florida team, that's what you need to have. Also, the team is not going to play well together. They have a lot of players that they've had to deal with suspensions, especially against that Michigan game. And so this way, with this team going up against Tennessee, which is going to be a big conference game, I don't think they're going to be able to play together, and that's how Tennessee's going to have the upper hand.
I tell you what, Jackson, being a Notre Dame fan, I can understand what you're talking about with Malik Zaire's. Hasn't really lived up to the hype. So, again, I think Tennessee just a little more physical, and they end up winning. Now, a big one tonight, and I know it's a lot of excitement around this one. Might not be close. I have USC beating Texas. That one, I have USC really winning handily. But it's really a great rematch, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
I definitely disagree. Tom Herman, I know you're watching this show. I'm rooting for you, okay? I'm rooting for you, and I'm rooting for the Texas Longhorns to pull off the upset here tonight. I think it'll be a shootout. I think there will be 2 or 3 things that happen that kind of roll in UT's favor, maybe a muff punt, something like that. I think UT is going to pull this off.
Oh, that's nice.
Take a breath. Take a breath.
But no, definitely I'm going to roll with USC in this game. I don't know which Texas team you watch because I understand they played San Jose State last week, but we don't even know who's going to be the quarterback for them. Shane Buechele got hurt in the first game against Maryland. Gerard Hurd is more of a receiver than he is a quarterback. They have the freshman right now, Sam Elder. He's played okay against San Jose State, but Texas hasn't shown the ability to stop anyone, especially not a Heisman front runner in USC quarterback.
The Texas offense right now is reeling, and I'm going to take a look at the USC defense. Everyone's kind of overlooking it. Right now, I think I've kind of proved to this show that I am a defensive guy. That is how I see championships are won. They played a juggernaut offense in Stanford that nobody really watches, and in that game, the offense of USC outdid the Stanford offense 623 yards to 342. With Stanford's offensive line to be able to control the possession of the ball, only getting 342 yards of offense is absolutely amazing. Sam Darnold is also throwing at 75% completion percentage through this year. That is Heisman finalist numbers right there. And to me, I don't think Texas has the willpower to just the mental strength to go to USC and win this game.
And plus, I like seeing Texas lose because of what they did to Charlie Strong.
There we go.
Well, Texas is 1-0 against USC when they are the underdog. You go back to that
Vince Young
championship.
Vince Young is not coming out of the tunnel.
You never know. I'm just throwing it out there.
He's on staff. He's on staff, okay?
And now the game that we're all getting ready for, North Texas at Iowa. We have North Texas on the road for their second straight time. Now I have North Texas beating Iowa, and hear me out. North Texas, their first 2 games have gotten off to really quick starts. Iowa, their first 2 games have gotten off to sluggish starts. I think if North Texas can continue what they've been doing, get off to a quick start, and then keep their composure, that's something we didn't see last week. If they can keep their composure, they can pull this one off.
I'm rolling with Iowa. I mean, I can be a homer all day and say that North Texas can win because of this, and this. But I think in a perfect world, maybe North Texas, but I'm rolling with the Iowa Hawkeyes here.
Kennedy, I'm not being a homer. I'm going to go with North Texas to win this game because it's just something about Seth Luttrell that I believe in this team. I feel like they had some small mistakes against SMU that I know they can clean up in this game. Mason Fine is leading Conference USA in yards and touchdowns, so I wouldn't be surprised to see SMU pull out because honestly, Iowa's not worried about UNT. They're worried about Penn State next week, so they really want to hurry up and get this game over it so they can play next week against Penn State at night.
Exactly. They're worried about Penn State next week, which is why they're going to build momentum this week. Today, I love UNT. UNT is where I come from. However,
thank you, Jackson.
Iowa is going to control the ball. They're going to control the ball this game. That's one thing that all three of us have agreed. It comes down to time of possession. Iowa is going to be able to use their massive offensive line, and UNT has struggled in the secondary with wide receivers bigger than 6'3". They have 3 people on their roster that are 6'3" and bigger. I don't think UNT's defense is going to be able to hold up. I think the offense is going to have a good game, but I think it's going to come down to defense, and Iowa's going to have the upper hand.
I thought Seth Luttrell said it best. He said, "What do we have to lose in this game?"
Oh, right.
So
exactly. A bowl game. A bowl game.
No, but I mean, North Texas.
Mason Fine, coming off a career performance last week, has some momentum. And there's an Iowa team that struggled, gave up 333 passing yards last week. I think that might go well for Mason Fine. So, again, never know. I'm going UNT. I think they got the upset here. I think they're a little more focused. They're a little more poised after that loss last week. And I think UNT has the victory. So thank you all for tuning in to Mean Green Game Day. Again, kickoff coming up shortly from Kinnick Stadium in Iowa City. North Texas taking on the Iowa Hawkeyes. You can catch that game on ESPN2. And thank you for everyone involved in this broadcast. Thank you to Kennedy Miller, Jordan James, and Jackson Donovan. I'm Nick Laupia saying so long. We'll see you next time. Thank you for watching Mean Green Game Day.